What is going on, everybody, and welcome back. This is the Broad Street Boys podcast. I am 4 for 4 Philly fan,
I'm Tim from Tim Talks Philly.
and today we're going to be talking about the Philadelphia 76ers. I know a lot of people in this city don't watch the Sixers. They're a good team, but regular season basketball is absolutely painful to watch sometimes between the bad calls, the bad coaching, the resting of the players. I understand. For me, I love basketball. I'll always watch the Sixers, especially because have season tickets, so I can't really get out of that. But, you had a good run with the Phillies, you had a good run with the Union, you had a good run with the Eagles. And now you have the Sixers, third place, 26 and 7 in their last, 30 games. They're a good team. I know it's painful to watch, as I just said, but this is a good team. We're gonna be discussing if I think if he thinks we can win a championship. Uh, we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. Just Sixers basketball. The second half of the season starts tonight, so we wanted to come on here and talk about Sixers basketball with you guys. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So Sixers, 26 and 7, last 33 games. You have a very, very, very tough schedule coming up. Your next 6 games is tonight against the Grizzlies, Saturday against the Celtics, Monday against Miami. Those three are at home, but then you go away to Miami. Then you have a back-to-back Miami and then Dallas, and then on next Saturday, you play the Milwaukee Bucks. That is not an easy challenge. You have John Morant tonight, Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown in a couple days, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, Luka Doncic and Kyrie, and then maybe Giannis. I know he hurt his wrist, but you still have a contending championship caliber team in the Milwaukee Bucks. It's not going to be easy, and this is the true test to see where the Sixers actually are. And I'm sure a lot more people are going to be tuning in because you got some prime time matchups coming up within this next week, and you know this is who we find out who the Sixers actually are.
Yeah, this is a team that's really disappointed in the playoffs the last couple of years. Of course, new roster made some moves over that period, but you said it. This is a stretch right here that you're going to really see what this team is made of. They're going against great teams that are you're going to have to be able to beat if you want to make a run at a championship. And you got to see what this team is made of. You know, we I'm one of those guys who's had trouble tuning into this team. It it's not fun to for me. It's not fun to watch them because they're obviously a good team. They've been in the run all year. They're playing really well right now. It's just been so hard to have hope in this team when I've watched them choke in the playoffs 4 years in a row. I came into this year telling myself like I don't really care what happens in the regular season. Like, yeah, get in the playoffs, but I don't care what happens. Get to the playoffs and show me you're worth something because it's been the same story. I've seen this team finished in the one seed, and it didn't mean a single thing. It didn't mean anything. So you're right. This is going to be a really important stretch coming down because you got to show that you can beat these teams. But if you can't, who's to say you're going to make a run in the playoffs this year? So I agree. This is a vital stretch for the Sixers coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and as you just said, you have to beat these teams in order to make the championship, let alone win it. I mean, you got Boston. I don't care. I'll put my money where my mouth is. You're going to play the Boston Celtics in the playoffs. Especially if you go far. I mean, you will definitely play Boston. If you stay the 3 seed, you will definitely play the Milwaukee Bucks. And you might start off with the Miami Heat. So these are three teams that we're playing all in a week span that we could be playing back to back to back series. And then who knows? We could be playing the Grizzlies or the Mavericks in the NBA Finals. It's Not easy. And it doesn't really get easier because I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I know for the most part you do have the Denver Nuggets away. You do have the Golden State Warriors away with Steph Curry coming back. You have the Bulls twice. I know they aren't the best, but they're still a solid team. And then at the end of the season, you play the Bucks, the Celtics, and the Heat again. So you have two matchups against Boston left. You have three, possibly even four matchups against Miami, and then you have two more against the Bucks. This is not an easy schedule, and it's going to be tough. It is. And if the Sixers, you know, if they take a couple days off, if they blow a couple leads, like we are accustomed to seeing with this team the last few seasons, especially under Doc Rivers. I mean, we're in third. We're in third right now in the Eastern Conference. We're only 2 games above the Cleveland Cavaliers, who we do play. And if depending on how this stretch goes, we could go as far down to as five. It wouldn't surprise me. We just won 26 games of 33. Well, over the next 25, you have 10 home, 15 away, and you could easily lose 10 of these games and go 15-10. And at that point, who knows where you sit? Because if that's the case, if you lose 10 games of the 25, you're going to be losing to Cleveland, Boston, Milwaukee, Phoenix, Dallas, Miami, Memphis. You're going to lose to these teams if you lose 10 games. It's bound to happen. You're not We play a couple solid, the Pacers, we play them twice, but for the most part, it's a tough schedule. And if you don't take advantage, if you take nights off, if Embiid doesn't play or if Harden doesn't play, you're going to drop in the standings. And that is the worst thing possible for the Sixers team. Because if you don't get the number one seed, your championship, aspirations are cut tremendously. I mean, it's not even a debate about that.
Yeah, their schedule is kind of, I'd say bookends, but really there's not a whole lot of teams thrown in between there. You have this tough stretch coming, a tough stretch to end it, and yeah, maybe a few easier games coming, but you're playing a lot of really good teams. So, like we talked about earlier, this is going to be an important stretch for me personally. I don't know if I can speak for too many other fans. This is a stretch coming up that you probably can't win me over. You unless you like sweep or something like that, you're gonna have a hard time winning me over or getting me to a point where I'm like, yeah, let's go. I'm riding. We're in this thing. But you can lose me. You can lose me if you struggle over this stretch. So, and I feel like a lot of people are like that. You have a team that's pretty much centered around Embiid. Maxi's been kind of up and down and was dealing with an injury, so it hasn't been the season that he was hoping for. Harden, if he doesn't show up in the playoffs, you might as well tune out because you don't have a team that's good enough to compete if essentially your number two star isn't playing well. So I think the schedule's tough, but you kind of just, if you want to get this fan base really in, you got to play really, really well. But I think you're more in danger of losing people. If you go through this stretch and struggle and don't really show that you have a roster capable of making a run, I think they could be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I mean, this is what I'm going to say to all Sixers fans out there, all Philadelphia sports fans watching this. For those of you that have not tuned into the Sixers, I've watched every game. Unfortunately, on some of them, I watched the 12-12 start, and I've seen the 26-7, stretch. And this stretch, give it the first 6 games. Grizzlies, Boston, Miami, Dallas, and Milwaukee. If we go 4-2, this team is legit. I mean, this team is a legit contender, except if they lose to Boston and Milwaukee. If they lose both, and you beat, Miami, who you should beat, you beat Dallas, who you wouldn't have to see until the NBA Finals, and if you beat Memphis, who you also you wouldn't have to see until the NBA Finals. I mean, then I can see, checking out. But if we beat Boston on Saturday, 8:30 start in Wells Fargo Center, and then we go back in a week and we beat the Bucks in Milwaukee. This team is legit. I mean, they have a shot. Nobody thought that the Phillies were making the playoffs, or nobody thought the Phillies were going to make the World Series. They beat the Cardinals, who, they were on the level of the Phillies at that point in the season. They beat the world champs, and then they beat a stacked, hot Padres team. Anything can happen. You just have to get there. You got to be hot at the right time. But the difference between the two teams is the Phillies, they weren't supposed to win anything. They had nothing to lose. The the Sixers, if you are a second round exit, that could be the last time you see Joel Embiid in the 76ers uniform. Straight up. I hate to say it, but it could be. Why does he want to get bounced in the second round every year when he could go to a Miami or a Dallas if they don't re-sign Kyrie? You have Luka and Embiid on the same team. I mean, that you think the Harden and Embiid pick and rolls on all time great? Imagine Luka Doncic and Joel Embiid with the pick and roll. I mean, that would be the greatest pick and roll of all time, and I don't even think it would be a debate. They'd win multiple championships, and we would be sitting here as Sixers fans, you know, saying, "Wow, look what happens when the team goes, full in on a Sixers team." But hopefully, it
Yeah,
doesn't get.
yeah, you're not far off there. I mean, I would need to sit down and double check kind of contract situations and all that. But yeah, this is not something that Joel Embiid's having fun with, losing it. Like having to go through a grueling season, taking nights off, a couple years where he's in the MVP conversation and not even getting noticed for that. Like this guy's been taking on a lot, getting hurt, having to, it's not
He's
when the
questionable every
yeah,
night.
it's not fun when the end of the road is not even getting to the conference finals. It's the conference championship. It's been rough for us, and it'd be really sad to see in the last couple of years people throwing the idea around, and you're like, not yet, not we could still make a run. And then right now, I think after this year, yeah, it seems like I would completely if we don't get past the second round, I probably will completely lose hope in this team because I was pretty much there going into the season. It was still more so let's get to the playoffs and we'll see. But there'd really be no other reason to believe otherwise when you've seen it happen so many times and they're just we've had a couple rosters that I think would have been able to go the distance, some flaws along the bench, but our best rosters are behind us. So yeah, it would be sad to see, but I think you're on the nose with that.
All right, let me just ask you this: as Sixers fan to Sixers fan, are you? Is it too early to be confident in this team before watching this run? If they go, 18 and 8 or whatever it is, 18 and 7 or 9 or 20 and 5, which they're not going to. If they do, I mean, they might win the championship. But
Mm.
is it too early to say or to have any hope in this? It might be the right word. Have any hope in this team actually bringing anything back to the city besides a second round loss?
I would say it is, but I mean, you're sitting what third in the Eastern Conference right now. So it sounds ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous to say, "Oh, you're third, but you shouldn't have hope in this team." Like what? I just think this run is so important that you can't really say you're tremendous. I mean, you can be confident that they're going to do well with this run, and that's kind of a whole separate topic. But before the run, seeing what you've seen, I don't know. I would say, yeah, it's probably a little crazy to say you're confident. Believing is one thing, but confidence, I don't know. I I think this run is just this run could show you so much. The home game against Boston, if you lose that game, sorry, done. Like, no, you can't lose at home to Boston and expect to beat them in a series. Like, no, you just got wiped by their scrubs. Like, you're already walking on thin ice with me. I think there's been enough red flags right now, even though they've been playing well. There's been a few red flags, them not really doing much at the deadline. There's been enough red flags to where I would say, yeah, you probably can't say you're confident in this team, or I think your confidence is misplaced.
Yeah. So, looking at the standings, we are in third, as you just said, 38 and 19. We're 3 games out of first. And the 2 teams ahead of us are Milwaukee and Boston, as we all know. If you win Saturday and the Celtics, obviously lose that one, but lose a couple others. If you are the number 1 seed by the end of the year, I will then be confident. I will say, okay, the East runs through Philly, even though it has before with the Hawks and like that. That to me was you should have won that series, but not going back on that. But you could be in first place. You could steal this 1 seed. It's going to depend on this 6. It's going to depend on, everything over the next month and a half. That's what we have to base it off of. The season starts now. We are close enough in range with the Celtics. We are close enough in range with the Milwaukee Bucks to where especially with Giannis being injured, we have a week of games, and Giannis is probably going to be out for all of them, including even ours. We could overtake the Bucks without Giannis. I don't care how it gets done. If you are the 2 seed, and then in April you play Boston again, then we're a game out, a half a game out, and you beat Boston. I mean, okay, now we're talking.
I mean, yeah,
But
those are, but you said it. Yeah, you could overtake the Bucks without Giannis, but again, that's when we're getting into the whole being confident in this team. We could go and beat the Bucks without Giannis, and I don't care. You would get to the 2nd seed, dude. We just finished the 1st seed last year and did nothing with it, or was that the year before? It was last year, right?
last year we
No,
were
that was the year before we were the 1 seed.
2020 we were first.
Yeah. All right. So
And
yeah,
then
2 years ago, 2 years
19,
ago, you finished 1 seed, still bounced, couldn't get past the second round. So I think,
Atlanta.
yeah. So you're looking at this team and you're saying, yeah, oh, you can do it. You can make a run at the standings. And I guess that's coming from my mindset of I don't believe in this. I don't believe in this team until I see something in the playoffs. But
Yeah.
I'll watch them beat these teams and say, all right, yeah, well, cool. You're not going to be playing the Bucks in the playoffs without Giannis, or
Yeah.
if you end up just squeaking by Boston in this game coming up, yeah, guess what? There's a very good chance you're not going to have to. You're going to have to play more road games and away games, and if you're barely, I mean, yeah, it's always going to be a tough game against the Celtics. So a win will be a win. We don't have to crunch it and be like, oh, they barely beat them. But it wouldn't say enough to me. That's, hey, they won a few of these games. It'll come down to how they're won. And with the Bucks, if you win without playing Giannis, sorry, it doesn't mean anything to me. Good, like I'm rooting for you to win. Obviously, go get a better spot, go get a better seed. But it's not necessarily going to make me feel a whole lot better. If we go wipe the floor of them with Giannis, cool. Even if you just play a good game and win, both the games we play against the Bucks the rest of the season are on the road. Those are not going to be good games. I will value a win in Milwaukee, I'll say, more in a sense than Boston, even though Boston's so good this year that no matter where you beat them, it's going to be a big deal. But I think those are the games where you look at, if this team is going to be successful, you have to be able to go into other arenas and beat these really, really good teams. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know. You gotta go on the road in the playoffs. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a lot of how they win these games over if it's just, hey, did we move up in the standings? Did we move down in the standings? So I think that's why when we talk about how important this stretch is, it is important because there's a lot of factors involved with it.
100%. And I know we're going back a couple years now, but the team with Jimmy Butler, it was kind of similar scenario wise. Look at like I'll never forget the game where Jimmy Butler hit the game winning shot on Boston was a game late in February, right after the All Star break, just like this one. And what happened? We were 1,000 times better than Boston for the rest of the season. And we were the luckiest shot away from winning a championship, in my opinion. I know you can't say, oh, well, you had to play the Bucks and then you had to play the Warriors. Okay, but we were a very, very good team that year. And again, it's all momentum. Sports is a game of runs, especially in basketball, and not just in that game in particular. In the season, the rest of the season, depending on how you beat Boston, if you could beat them the next two times that you play them, and we tie the season series, and we overtake the one seed, and we have a Jimmy Butler esque season ahead of us going into the playoffs, where you play a beat up, not great Nets team or Knicks team, and then you play, one of the top dogs, Milwaukee or Boston. In that case, last time it was Toronto and Cleveland. In this case, it's Boston and Milwaukee, or it was actually Milwaukee and Toronto, anyways. But you're right. It depends on how we win. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want you know, oh, we're playing the Bucks without Giannis. Let's go and win by 2 points. I don't want that. First of all, you can't have that. In my opinion, looking at the next six, you should destroy Miami. They're the seventh seed. I mean, they stink. They're not
Yeah, they
good.
haven't
I
been
don't know
good.
why. I mean, we took PJ Tucker off of them, and all of a sudden they're awful. I don't know how that makes sense. You would think they would get better. They actually have a power forward that can score the basketball.
Mm-hmm.
But, you should beat Miami. You should beat Memphis tonight easily. I mean, we're -4 right now. Uh, no Steven Adams, who has had a very good history against Embiid. But again, that don't matter because the only two games that matter within the next six, to me, is Boston at home and Milwaukee on the road. That is the true test, and that is the true test for the rest of the season. That will depend on how people like Tim watch the rest of the NBA season. Because I can't, as a diehard Sixers fan, I can't disagree with Tim. I can't. I cannot do it because he's right. It's painful watching this team. It truly is. When you are up 31 points against the Cleveland Cavaliers last week and you blow that lead and you're only up by 4 with 2 minutes left, and Donovan Mitchell just went from 8 points to 30 points in a span of 12 minutes in a quarter, that can't happen because let me tell you this, Donovan Mitchell is a good player. John Morant, Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, and Giannis are great
Yep.
players and better than Donovan Mitchell. So if we can't stop Mitchell, what the hell are these guys going to do? I mean, seriously. And we'll obviously see. PJ played great defense on Donovan Mitchell, and then for some reason Doc Rivers takes him out for the last 12 minutes of the game, which makes no sense. But Boston and Milwaukee, circle the dates on your calendars. Make sure to tune in. They're on national television, so I don't want to hear, oh, I don't get the game here. You can watch it. Trust me. And that's how we're gonna, you know, look and
Yeah, I
see
mean,
how the Sixers play the rest of the year.
yeah, I mean, coming from me, I'd say this is the time to watch them. This is the time to see how they truly measure up against a lot of these teams. Going back to one of your earlier points talking about taking out PJ Tucker and then everything kind of collapsing. This team is gonna if this team is gonna succeed, it comes down to getting great play from your starters, dominating when your starters are on the floor, and being able to survive when they're not. More specifically, able to survive when Embiid's not on the floor. This has been a problem for them, and games that shouldn't have been close, like you just mentioned. But that's what it's going to come down to in the playoffs. Embiid showed that he will ball out when he needs to. He can ball out in games, but when he comes off the court, I'm sorry, obviously he can't do anything. He's sitting and watching, and we don't have the guys right now, or at least playing right now, that can keep the game manageable while he's out. So I think that's what this team's success is going to come down to. And when we talk about how they're going to win, it's not by how many points are they going to win over this next stretch. It's what is the bench doing? How dominant are the stars? Not only playing, executing, but how are they looking? Like, are they working well together? Are they passing the ball? There's so many. That's why when I mentioned there's a lot of little things to look at for this, that's what it's going to be. And I think the bench is going to be so important because it's been a big flaw of this team.
Yeah, I mean, I have the roster of guys that actually play right here.
Do stuff.
You have Harden, you have Melton, you have Tobias, Tucker, and Embiid. That's your starting five for the last couple of months. Then you have Maxey, Jalen McDaniels, who, he's been solid, I guess you could say. He brings a little bit more to the table offensively than Matisse did, which, again, I think we could do that offensively at least. And McDaniels is a solid enough defender where you're not like, oh my God, I wish we had Matisse. Niang, who I love the guy, don't get me wrong. I mean, he can't play a lick of defense. He can't jump over a phone book if that's even a thing anymore. But, he can hit a three. And sometimes that's definitely what this team needs. You got Shake, who probably doesn't get into the playoff rotations for the second, third season now. He wouldn't get into a rotational, playoff minutes. Not saying that that's his fault. You have Tyrese Maxey coming off the bench. And then you have you have three big men on your team of Montrezl Harrell, who, again, is 6'8", Paul Reed, who is 6'9", and Dwayne Dedman, who is like 1,000 years old. So we don't have a backup big. Paul Reed is probably your best, and trust me, that ain't good. I like Paul Reed as a basketball player, or as a person, I guess, but basketball-wise, what does he do? What does he do for you? Every time Paul Reed's in the game, it's a foul. Every time. He doesn't score. He has no, outside ability. He has a post move, a little hook shot, but that's not backup bigs. And I know, at least for playoff purposes, that won't be the case for the most part. Embiid's going to be playing like 42 minutes of the 48 in the playoffs. But Dwayne Dedman was probably, by any team in the NBA, the worst buyout option pickup for anybody. It just didn't. It does not make sense for our timeline. Like, why is Dwayne Dedman a backup? He wasn't good last year. He got traded and then cut this year for the second straight season in a row, by the way, because he was cut last year and got picked up by Miami. So I don't know if this is like a trend of getting the old players from Miami and bringing them onto the Sixers, but this bench is not Boston. They have Malcolm Brogdon coming off the bench. They have Blake Griffin coming off the bench, who's not great, but against us, he hit 5 threes. He's not guys off Milwaukee. He's not a Bobby Portis. He's not.
Yeah, I mean, our only guy really coming off the bench that's any worth is Maxey, and you could argue, honestly, he should just be starting at this point, which is, another interesting topic. So I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, and that actually is the next thing that I wanted to bring up. Should Maxey start? He brings a lot offensively, more than Melton, because not saying that DeAnthony Melton isn't a good player. He's probably the best, bench player slash two that we've had since JJ. And JJ couldn't guard anybody. So at least like Melton playing, the defensive role, he's like fourth in steals in the league. He can hit the three, which is always nice. But is he doing enough? Because when you have Harden, DeAnthony, Tobias, Tucker, and Embiid, well, for those of you that watch these games, you know that it's just Joel and Harden scoring in the fourth quarter out of these out of the five guys that I just said. But when Maxi's in, well, now you have a pick and roll with four people collapsing on that, and then you have Maxi wide open, and he's fast enough to where if they do collapse, he'll split it or he'll go around and he'll score. It's just hard because he also is not a good defender. Melton is by far the best defender on this team outside of Embiid and Tucker probably. But Maxi starting worked to a sense, I guess, because you look at when Melton has been starting with Maxi out of the lineup, with Maxi in the lineup, we've won. I mean, we have succeeded. We've lost 7 games in 2.5 months of basketball. I know that that's what we look at, and I know that that is, the highlight of every, YouTube video and talk radio show is fire Doc Rivers every time the Sixers lose. We never talk about Doc Rivers or the Sixers when they win, but when they lose, the world's ending.
Yeah.
But back to the Maxi point, I don't know personally. I have no idea what to do with Tyrese Maxey. I just think come playoff time, I think he should come off the bench, but he has to get more minutes than or Melton because he's a better offensive player than both. He impacts the game more just offensively than Melton and Tobias do defensively and offensively combined. So it's definitely a toss up for me. I know when Doc first moved Maxi to the bench, he said it was for, they're going to have some specific lineups. Well, there hasn't been a specific lineup. It's just been one lineup the entire season since Maxi, broke his foot. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
Maxi starting, not starting?
Yeah, so I would definitely need to watch more. I haven't seen enough, with him on the court with Harden compared to with him off. But I think, starting is such an interesting thing in a lot of sports. Like I would say specifically, basketball and football. Starting sometimes will kind of overtake the bigger points. It comes down to are these guys getting the minutes they need, and what are they? Yeah, like you were talking about with the lineups being sent out there. I think that's more important than if Maxi starts or not. He's still getting decent minutes. Maybe he could get a few more because both him and Harden are playing really, really well right now. But I don't disagree with any of your points. I think Maxi's shown a lot of value. I think being able to manage him and Harden separately, like always being able to have one of these guys on the court is obviously incredibly important. If you're not put together nonstop, there's no reason not to. It's a tremendous advantage to have at least one of these guys on the court at all times. So like I said, I would need to sit down and watch a lot more. I plan on watching a lot more in this next coming weeks with this run, but I don't get too worried about if he's starting. It's about, is he getting his minutes, and is Doc Rivers doing his job, and is he on the court with the right guys? So I think that's probably what we should be looking at.
Yeah, for sure. And look, Maxi plays just as many minutes, if not more minutes, than half the starters, anyways. because he's so like I mean he's young
Yeah.
enough to where he can run on the court for two straight quarters, and he has done that before. He has started the third quarter when PJ Tucker or DeAnthony Melton get hurt or just get sore or something. It's happened with Tucker a couple times this year where he doesn't return, and they have Maxi, Melton, Harden, Tobias, and Embiid out on the floor together for basically the whole second half. And we've all seen Tyrese Maxey. We all saw his first really good game against the Nuggets when the NBA refused to let us, suspend the game, even though everybody else suspend games for people that were sick. But Maxey's a very talented basketball player. I mean, we all know that. I don't. As long as it's not affecting his play, him coming off the bench, him starting, I don't care. Honestly, it's not like baseball where you throw Scott Kingery in center field and it messes up everything else with him.
Yeah.
It's You're not going to start the game, but we'll see you with 8 minutes left in the first quarter. We'll see you the entire second half and majority of the second quarter, and you'll finish every quarter and you'll start every second and fourth quarter. So if you're looking at it like that, whatever works, I don't care. And if it doesn't affect his play, I don't care. I just want to win. And you, every championship team needs a sixth man of the year potential player on their team, and that is Maxi to us.
Yeah, I mean, he's logging anywhere between 30 to 35 minutes most games. Every now and then there'll be something in the 20s. But he's still getting minutes and last couple games he's still balling out. Last 10 he's had what, 3 games over 20. I mean, you said it. It's if it's not affecting his performance, it's not anything to stress about. I think if you decide to start him, it's not the end of the world. But whatever you choose, I think you should stick to it. I think you should jump around because whatever you got, you're going to have the same starting lineup when you get into the playoffs. You want these guys to prepare to get to jump out of the gates and get moving. I know that's been an issue in big games the last couple of years is starting out slow, and that's a big part for these guys. It's knowing you're going to be in the starting lineup, and yeah, on top of guys being good together, having guys on the court that can start strong. A guy like Maxi is electrifying. He's young, he's quick, he does all them things that as long as that's like your game plan going in, he can catch some guys sleeping early on. And I think that's where his value with starting is. He comes off the bench. Yeah, it's also nice to have a quick guy like that coming off the bench, especially if it's relieving Harden in that situation. But I think covered most of that. It's as long as he's playing well, as long as he's getting his minutes, which those are my two big things. Primarily, him still getting his minutes. I'm not too worried about where he's at, and unless all of a sudden the next couple of weeks these guys that are starting are really starting to poop the bed a little bit. I guess the
Yeah,
nice way to put it, but yeah, I'm not I would say I'm not overly worried about it or looking too far into it right now.
look, we won 26 games of our last 33.
Yeah, it's not like something is not working, but
If Doc has done one thing right, I guess it's been during this run. You can't really fault him for we could be better. Obviously, don't blow 20-point leads, and that we would probably be a lot better. We might have won 30 games of the 33, but whatever. Um, I just kind of want to touch in a little bit on the buyout options. I know that the Sixers are probably done. I would assume so. We were so worried about getting to that cap, that hard cap, that we didn't do much at the deadline. We got McDaniels, and he is a solid, solid role player. But that's it. And obviously with the buyout market, that's what you're going to find is solid role players. But is there room for improvement on this team? Yeah, there is. And I have two names written down, And, they've been names in the NBA. One has even played for us before. The buyout options for me, Will Barton, who is a veteran wing who can hit a three, who is a little bit athletic. He's still got some left in the tank, but he can make threes. He's a veteran. He's played in the playoffs before. And if you're not going to start, or if you're not going to have Shake Milton in this rotation of guys, well, Will Barton is a better option because then you have Maxi running the point. You have Will Barton as your two. You have McDaniels as your three, and then you rotate guys. But and that kind of brings me into the next guy that I have on my buyout options list. You know, Tony Bradley. I liked him before. He didn't play a lot in Chicago because you have Vucevic, and then you have the others. You had three Sixer backup centers as their centers. You had Vucevic, you had Drummond, and you had Tony Bradley all on the Bulls, all former Sixers that were buried down on the bench or traded away for something else. And Tony Bradley with us was a solid player. He was even better at times than Al Horford was during that year. And I can't even
Yeah,
remember what we traded him for,
I mean that
but
was during a stretch where we just refused to play young players. I mean, it's kind of been our mo where we just, hey, you're young, sorry, don't care what kind of potential you have. Maybe we can use you for some value. I mean, that's kind of been the move. But you're right. I think he would is a very intriguing piece to bring back. I think he's a good rebounder. I think he will benefit you a lot coming off the bench. It's just it's something that they would have to see value in, and if he does come, you'd have to be able to put him on the court and give him minutes.
yeah. And looking at Paul Reed, Dwayne Dedman, and Montrezl Harrell, it's not saying much, but Tony Bradley is the best player for this playoff run than any
Mm,
of them. I don't understand the Dwayne Dedman signing at all. I really just don't. Like it feels like a roster filler, which I don't want a roster filler. I want a
yeah,
backup center that can actually play basketball. Because what is the number one thing that all Sixers fans complain about every year? Besides rebounding, it's we have never, except for half a season, had a backup center that can back up Joel Embiid. Never had it, except for
yeah,
Andre Drummond. We traded them away. And you look at every single one of them: Greg Monroe, Mike Muscala, now Dwayne Dedman, Montrezl Harrell, Paul Reed, Dwight Howard. Tony Bradley was probably the second best if you really think about it. He was arguably the second best player to back up Joel Embiid in the Embiid era. Again, not saying much, but in the playoffs, I only need Tony Bradley for 6 to 8 minutes. That's it. I only need him for 2 minutes every single quarter. At the start of the second, at the start of the fourth, at the end of the first, at the end of the third. That's the only time I need Tony Bradley or Paul Reed. Because if you do sign Bradley, it's probably going to switch and rotate between those two for the regular season, and then you got a moment. But I don't know. I would like to see both of them in a Sixers uniform. Maybe cut some of the other guys. Furkan, I don't know why he's still on this team. Like you should have just cut him already. But I don't know. There's if there's any options out there, those are my two because I think that Maxi McDaniels and Niang are good enough to where you can have an 8-man rotation. But if you want to get a little bit deeper, you add Will Barton, you add Tony Bradley. Well, now you have 11 guys that I feel comfortable playing if you add Shake Milton into that. 12, I guess, if Paul Reed, but you don't need a lineup that deep in the playoffs anyway. So it's really just if money works. I'm not Daryl Morey. I don't know how this works. I don't know how much money I have to play with or roster fillers, but that's my take on the buyout options. And, you know, that's really Not saying much.
Yeah, it's thin pickings. I mean, this is probably the least interested I've been in years. It's just not a whole lot there. Barton would be nice. You know, he's a good 3 point shooter. It'd be nice to have. I think if I'm looking at any guys, I think the points you touched on with with Tony are big. It's probably the move they would make if they make anything, in my opinion. But who knows? They haven't seemed to be making moves to make this team better recently. It was you like you said to figure out the cap situation, and then after that that was it. That was what they valued, and they kind of showed their card there. So I don't know. We'll see. But like you said, nothing to nothing's really popping off the page there for buyout guys.
And just to clarify for everybody out there, Mac McClung is not the answer for this Sixers team.
I don't know, but
Solid dunker. That's it.
he's a superstar. Come on,
Yeah,
be honest.
not
He's a superstar.
on this basketball court. If I see Mac McClung, I'm turning it off, and I ain't watching for the rest. If he's getting valuable minutes over guys like Shake, because that's what people want to do. I've never seen something. I've never like this fan base, man. Sometimes they amaze me with some of the things that they say.
Yeah, that's a big haven't, paid attention to the Sixers until, Sports Center started posting dunk contest highlights and we had a winner. It's oh my god, he's got to be the guy. We got to start playing it. Nah, come on. Like
He had a
nothing
good
there.
Rising Stars game. He had a good dunk contest. He's on the Blue Coats for a reason.
Made
If he,
All-Star weekend somewhat entertaining for Sixers fans. As boring as it is for NBA fans, made it at least interesting for us, but that was
yeah,
about it.
like congrats. Like, look,
Yeah.
Mac, if you're listening for some reason,
Oh, he's 100% listening. It's not yeah, but
yeah, it's nothing against you.
great
It's
guy, superstar.
at least you'll get a ring if you win. But
he's already got a trophy. Probably the only
yeah,
trophy
he
he's
does.
bringing to
Let's just
Philly.
keep that. He's the only one that could actually get it done for the city of Philadelphia.
I'll
I
take
mean,
it. I've
people
been
were
waiting for
partying
it.
on.
I've been waiting for a trophy. So I mean, thanks,
Yeah,
Mac. I
I mean, I was
appreciate
hanging off the light pole after he won. I went right over the Broad Street.
it. Yep.
Finally won a championship. No more second place starting with Mac McClung.
Everyone thinks we're a joke. About a couple second places, but we finally got a first place that actually matters. So
Yeah,
we're
Mac
good.
McClung, dude.
I'm good for the year.
Guys, speaking of Sixers fans, this is something that, you know, I do a lot. And I know that a lot of Sixers fans do. And we don't look at the bigger picture. We don't look at, oh my God, we're 26-7 in our last 30 whatever games. We look at the 7 losses. We look at the one against Orlando. We look at the one against Houston. We look at the 21-point lead blown to New York. We look at the one against Boston. The fact that I can recite this in my head without even thinking about it is exactly my point. With do Sixers fans overreact? And as a Sixers fan, yeah, we do. We do a lot. But here's the thing, it's fun to overreact. It's fun to talk on Twitter. But when it's literally just when you guys say stuff that just doesn't sound like the Mac McClung thing, are we that much of an overreaction? Is that much of an overreaction to where you think we're that bad that you want Mac McClung to be a rotational guy for this team? We're 38-19. We're not scrubs. We're almost 30 games above 500. Or 20 games above 500 we're almost. So, yes, we do overreact. But let's look at some of the bright side. And that is we are third place in the East. We are 3 games out of first place. We have some big matchups against the teams that are ahead of us. Yeah, it's basketball. Sometimes it doesn't go your way. Sometimes, again, I said it earlier, it's a game of runs. You have teams that go on 21 nothing runs, and then you have us go on 21 nothing runs, and then we're tied. But my biggest thing, as one of, if not the biggest Sixers fan that I do personally know, just watch the 6 games that we play in the next week. That's all I can ask. If they fail, don't watch them until playoffs. I don't care. It's not money out of my pockets. I'm just saying, as a Sixers fan who has watched this team for every single game of this season, every one, not lying, give them a chance. And don't go to Twitter when you want your facts and your news, because you're just going to see a bunch of Doc Rivers hate. That's all you get from Sixers fans half the time. It's true, because I've done it. And just watch the games, because as frustrating as it is to lose, and to lose to the Knicks and the Magic and the Rockets and Boston for the 100th time in the last 5 years, this is a damn good basketball team. Championship level, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. This next 6 games, 25 games, we'll know if we're good or not. But give it a week. That is my strongest urge to throw at you guys. Give it a week. If we're terrible against Boston, if we split against Miami, and we lose to Dallas or Milwaukee, or if we lose all 6, or if we win all 6, keep an
Mm-hmm.
open mind. Watch the Sixers. They're still, arguably, the second best team in the city. Record wise and consistently, they have been a playoff team for the last 5 years. They have been a painful, consistent second round exit, but they've gotten to the playoffs a lot. And anything can happen. And if the Phillies aren't like the biggest truth about that, then I don't know. Wrong city to root for, I guess, because anything can happen, especially, you know, with the fans behind a team as strongly as Philadelphia fans are behind their teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think Philly fans as a whole, not specifically, you know, looking at Sixers fans, we're a very passionate fan base, and I mean, we see it with every single one of these teams. When you're that passionate, the highs are the highest of highs, and the lows are the lowest of lows. There's really no in between. So I think there's different aspects of this. When you're looking big picture, kind of what we talked about with me, yeah, I definitely would say I'm overreacting a lot. I saw different rosters fail, and it's making me believe that this one's going to fail, and that's not necessarily fair. But it's just I was so background. I was never really big into basketball growing up. I played it a lot, and as Embiid started getting into his reign, I got into watching it more. Not because I was being a front runner. I'm big in Philly and all the other sports, but just it was finally something that when I was younger, the team was trash. We were going through that the whole process, but it was finally becoming interesting to me, and I was intrigued, and I got into it, and I got into it hard. I was nonstop watching videos during the off season, drafts I was getting all fired up for, and I got really into this team, and just for those that beginning experience to result in letdown every single year, and not just letdown. Yeah, I'd say the only one I would classify as a not disappointing letdown, which some would argue, is that Raptors ending. A lot of people would say it was disappointing, but at the end of the day, it was a great shot. It was something where you're like, I'm not necessarily disappointed in the team and how they ended it. It was just, hey, guess what? There's got to be a loser in a series, and unfortunately, it came and it was us. But every other series has been incredibly disappointing, and it's made me overreact to this year, to where I'm sorry, I don't care where you finish, I don't care how you look. If this roster isn't showing me anything that is like, hey, this team is special, I'm not going to believe that they're going to do anything different, which isn't true, which is not true at all. They could go and make a good run, and yeah, maybe not win it all, but even if you're able to almost get to the finals, say that's still a good run. Probably won't be enough to make Embiid believe, or what stuff we talked about earlier. But yeah, I definitely say this fan base as a whole is one of the more passionate ones, if not the most passionate, and with that comes with a lot of overreacting. But I don't know, with this team, who knows? It's a pretty similar core to what we've seen the past couple years, and you gotta prove to Philly that they're different. And I think we're so passionate that if you're showing us that you're different, we're gonna hop on for the ride. But until you do, we're gonna find every single reason to doubt you to to avoid the heartbreak that we've gone through with three different teams in this city over the past couple of months. But yeah, it's an interesting topic. I could probably get a lot more into it for other teams other than the Sixers right now. But yeah, we're notorious for it, and
Yeah,
I wouldn't want it any other way though.
yeah. And look, I would be lying if I said to you that I'm in Phillies mode. Like I am all about the Phillies right now until April. Until the Sixers actually start a playoff game. I'm right now. I'm Phillies loaded. I'm going to spring training in a week. Not even in like 5 days, 4 days. But it's tough watching regular season basketball, especially when you have a World Series, playing baseball team and a team like the Eagles go to the Super Bowl, and now you're going right back into spring training with Trey Turner and the new guys for the Phillies. It's hard to watch, the Wells Fargo teams. It is. The Flyers are bad. They're just bad, and they don't
Yeah, but
really.
even looking at, like, oh yeah, it's regular season. This is a stretch here where it's not going to feel like it. Yeah, before it was all right. Your first half of the season, second half is where things really take off. And like we talked about for a while on this episode, this is a stretch where it should feel like playoff basketball. We got some really good teams coming
Yeah,
into Philly. We're going to be going to some really good teams, and it's there's going to be a reason to watch the Sixers for the next couple of weeks here, and all for the rest of the season. So although it's been tough, this is finally the time where it's maybe like, all right, let's see what they got, and we got into whether they'll win us over or how they'll lose us. But this is finally the time, just if you're ever going to buckle in.
yeah. Now's the time to watch. I mean, we got a game in 4 hours from now, and you know the Grizzlies. They talk a lot of smack. They do. They're a cocky team for a weirdly odd reason. I
Yeah.
don't really understand it, but whatever. They're young,
How you're gonna do your
but
thing, right? That's what it is. They're young. It's
yeah. Look, they got some stars. Two All Stars, more than us. They have John Jaron. We had Joel.
mm-hmm.
Boston, two All Stars. Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum. Miami. Bam. Bam was an All Star, I think. Maybe. Luca and Kyrie, two All Stars on the Mavs, and Drew Holiday and Giannis. These are this is who we're playing against.
Yeah.
And you also got players on their teams that were All Stars at one point. Al Horford. I know he's a shell of his former self, but look, if there's three people in the NBA that get under Embiid, it's Al Horford, Steven Adams, and Marc Gasol. I don't know why unathletic old men can't, have Embiid in shambles all the year, every year, but whatever. He kills Bam. He bodies Bam every year. He bodies Brooke Lopez. He bodies, the other guys that are really good, but something about those slow moving
Something
3-point shooting centers. It's
Yeah.
weird, man. But
Yeah.
yeah, we got good Sixers basketball coming to you. This next week. And you got spring training in 2 days and prime
Give you a
time Sixers
Saturday.
basketball. You got the Flyers trade market. They're probably going to sell everything.
Sell
Hopefully,
everything.
not Carter Hart.
Sell everything.
Don't sell Carter. If you guys sell
Yeah.
Carter Hart, I am getting tattoo removal on the Flyers forehead. Like, man, at that point, I'm just gonna add a Union one right over
Yeah.
top the Flyers. But yeah,
Even though I don't know, Arson looks pretty good, so we could we can't get rid of Hart, but I mean we've got some guys that maybe we'll think about maybe
yeah,
dealing to get some value, but
yeah. That's maybe a couple singular, maybe like a short little podcast for another day. But
if
this was
if it is.
this was look Sixers more of my thing. Phillies and Eagles are, you know, were really good. Flyers more of Tim's thing. Union neither.
Neither,
So
but
don't
if
expect
you get to
Union
the
vibes.
finals, I'm gonna be waving a rally towel. I'm gonna be all in.
Yeah.
So just
Oh,
kidding.
100%. That's how it always is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Sixers podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. 4 Philly fan with Tim Talks Philly on the Broad Street Boys podcast. Thank you all so much for watching. Go Sixers. Please watch the next 6 games. This will show you who we are. I promise you that. Phillies on Saturday. Let's go Phils, babe. Uh, and, Sixers. So, with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. And I'm out. Peace.
Go Sixers. Talk to you later, Philly.